ChatGPT is going to pick every single NCAA March Madness tournament game, give us an analysis, give us a confidence score, and even tell us why an underdog might be able to pull out the victory. We have multiple upsets in every single round, so stay tuned, stick with it. If you have any questions, comments, or you like more of this content, comment below, like the video. I will see you inside. Now, here is the exact prompt we're going to use for every single matchup. I'm going to put this in the description, so if you want to use it, you certainly can. If you want to add some things to it, you can do that as well. But here's what we're going to give ChatGPT is all of this data, say, hey, go look all this up, and then give me this result. I want the winner, I want your confidence, and I want the top 3 reasons why you believe the winner is going to win the game. Now we're gonna skip Auburn versus their 16 seed playing team. We're gonna skip Duke and their 16 seed playing team. I just don't foresee any forecasting for an upset there. So we're gonna skip that and we'll move to Louisville and Creighton. The first game we're actually gonna use ChatGPT to predict is going to be Louisville versus Creighton. Now here are all the different metrics that I want ChatGPT to go ahead and read through before making a prediction. And again, you can get this prompt inside of the description, copy it and use it yourself and add some things that you maybe want to include that might help you give a better score. So I have Louisville here with a 65% confidence score. So this one's actually pretty tight. So I've got efficiency metrics here with a margin of victory. Looks like a margin of efficiency of 22 points, which is 21st in the country versus Creighton's 18.64, which is 40th in the country. I've got momentum, which is really nice. Even though they lost to Duke in the ACC championship, not bad. And Louisville is favored by 2.5 points over Creighton. So we're not picking an upset here, but very nice. So we'll go ahead and select Louisville on our bracket here to face Auburn, and we'll predict that game as we go. Next matchup here is going to be Michigan and UC San Diego. This will be a very fun game to watch. The 12 versus 5 is always ripe for upset. So we'll go Michigan here, and then we'll go UC San Diego here. UC San Diego. All right, punch, and here we go. So when you give ChatGPT a simple prompt, it actually makes the response a lot faster. So it's got Michigan, and let's see here. Strength of schedule looks better. Interior presence, okay. And then recent performance looks like Michigan has a lot more momentum, so that's nice. Let's see, efficient 3-point shooting, strong defense, make them a formidable opponent. Okay, so we have UC San Diego. Basically, their 3-point shooting with strong defense could be a reason that they upset Michigan, but ChatGPT thinks that Michigan has the edge here. So we'll go ahead and mark that, Michigan, and we'll drop down to Texas A&M and Yale. Texas A&M versus Yale. This will be a fun one as well. So enter the prompt for ChatGPT, and here's the response we got. So Texas A&M being the winner, so no upsets just yet. And basically every efficiency metric goes for Texas A&M. They're just better in every way and fashion. Now, strength of schedule is also very interesting, where Texas A&M has played one of the toughest schedules in the country versus Yale. And then the betting odds have Texas A&M favored by 7.5 points. So we're going to go ahead and choose Texas A&M here. Ole Miss versus South Dakota State or Ole Miss versus UNC. This is going to be an interesting one here because we have our first play-in game that could maybe cause for an upset. So let's look at it. I selected Ole Miss on accident. I can't unselect it, so we'll just see where the data takes us. So we'll do our first matchup here, which is going to be Ole Miss versus South Dakota State University. And while we're getting that one to load, we'll do Ole Miss versus North Carolina. Now, the way this is going to work is if we have Ole Miss beating South Dakota State, that's interesting. Let's see if we have Ole Miss beating North Carolina. Let's see what this one has. And while we get that load, looks like Ole Miss is just more efficient, has a tougher schedule, and they've been playing a little bit better. So interesting, even though South Dakota State is actually a pretty good basketball team. Now, let's see what this matchup brings us. We've got North Carolina with a 65% confidence score. So we're predicting an upset. So really interesting. Now, to make sure that we have this done right, we have to also do, let's do North Carolina versus South Dakota State University. We just need to make sure, because the way the bracket works is we have to basically pick the play-in winner over Ole Miss. So I've got North Carolina with this 85% confidence score. They're just more efficient, strength of schedule, and then I got better players on North Carolina than I do South Dakota State. So we're actually going to go ahead and choose the play-in winner over Ole Miss, our very first upset selected by ChatGPT. A lot of fun. Making our way. Iowa State versus Lipscomb. Let's go ahead and take a look at what ChatGPT thinks about this one. I'm going to go here. We've got Iowa State with an 85% confidence score. That's actually really high for what we've seen so far. We had UNC versus South Dakota State, and that makes sense. But let's see what Iowa State has here. So let's see. Top 10 defense. Okay. Good at first and turnovers. That's good. Big 12, I guess, is favored here over Lipscomb's schedule. And the betting odds have Iowa State by 15, 14 and a half points. That's pretty interesting. So we'll go ahead and select Iowa State for that one, which would be the winner of our what we think is going to be UNC versus Iowa State. Marquette in New Mexico, 7 versus 10. A lot of times these are marked as upsets if the 10 beats the 7, but this is usually the same type of basketball and same type of basketball team. So let's see what Chatgpt thinks here. We've got Marquette with a 70% confidence score. Looks like they're a bit more efficient when it comes to some of these advanced metrics. I've got them favored by 3.5 points, and they play a bit faster. Both teams play pretty fast. But Marquette's a bit more efficient. So really interesting here. We'll go ahead and select Marquette and we will move on. Michigan State and Bryant should be an interesting one. Hopefully Cohen Carr can get loose and get a couple fast break dunks. He's a walking highlight reel. So let's see what ChatGPT thinks. Prompt entered. And I've got Michigan State with a 95% confidence score. Just basically everything when it comes to efficiency, they're highly ranked. Michigan State's going to be a fun team for ChatGPT to analyze because they really like how efficient Michigan State is. So that'll be a lot of fun. We obviously trust the coach a lot, and they're favored by 18 points here, 17 and a half. So we'll go ahead and take Michigan State. So the Michigan State Marquette matchup will be a ton of fun. Let's go down to the West. Florida and Norfolk State, a 1 versus 16. Should be a blowout here. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks. I've got Florida with a 98% confidence score. That's pretty high. Quite interesting. One thing I added to this was how could Norfolk State pull out the upset? And one thing that came across was that their utilization of a zone could disrupt Florida's momentum and the way they run offense. Now, Florida shoots it pretty well, so it's kind of unlikely. But if there was a path for Norfolk State, it would be playing a great zone, rebounding really well, and then hoping Florida misses a ton of shots. So we're going to go ahead and select Florida because we're not crazy. But crazy things have happened. That's why they call it March Madness. Let's move on. The back-to-back champs, UConn versus Oklahoma. Down year for UConn, not as great as they've been, and they probably won't repeat as much as I would love to see that. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks of this matchup. So we've got UConn winning this round 1, 65% confidence score. UConn being a little bit more efficient. Now, some of the reasoning that ChatGPT gave, even though that UConn lost the semifinal to Creighton, is that their past experience would give them somewhat of an edge. Interesting. I'm going to pick UConn because that's what I believe if I was picking this just without any additional help. But interesting because I don't think they're going to get past Florida, and I think it's going to be a very quick tournament, unlike the previous 2 years for UConn. Another 12-5 matchup. We've got Memphis versus Colorado State. I like Memphis as a team. I feel like they come up short in big situations, but I do like them as a team. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks. Scroll down here, and we've got Colorado State with the upset. This is interesting. Now, they're favored by the betting markets, so that's something as well. But I got a confidence score of 60% to pick Colorado, the upset 12/5 here. Now, let's see what's going on. What is this? Memphis star guard is dealing with injury. Okay, so it looks like we have an injury is probably going to be the reasoning for this. So interesting there. We're going to give Colorado State the bump, and we'll take that. All right, another upset predicted by ChatGPT. Maryland and Grand Canyon, going to be a good one here. Maryland has a very talented roster. Derek Queen, he's just a stud. I really like his game. Grand Canyon's fun because their men's and women's team is pretty good. I think they're both going to the big dance. So a lot of fun for that university as a whole. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks. Maryland with a 75% confidence score. Very good defensive efficiency here. Betting markets take Maryland by 10.5 points. And they have a better strength of schedule. So we'll go ahead and take Maryland. That'll be one that I tune into for sure because Maryland's, they got a lot of talent. But Grand Canyon is pretty decent too. I've seen them play. Not bad. We'll jump to the next one. Mizzou and Drake. Let's get into it. A 6 versus 11. This one should be highly contested as well. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks. We've got Mizzou winning with a 65% confidence score. Mizzou is a 6.5 point favorite over Drake. So kind of interesting there. Mizzou has been, this is a better season for them. We'll see kind of where they finish, but been a pretty good offensive team. So that should carry over into the tournament. But at times you can know that offense doesn't always travel very well. So we'll see kind of how they play, but we'll go ahead and take the favorite in this one. Texas Tech and UNC Wilmington. Should be a lopsided matchup here. Let's take a look at what ChatGPT thinks. Got Texas Tech with an 85% confidence score here. Texas Tech was the 7th best and most efficient offense in the country. A lot of fun there. Defense, they're decent, but they just overpower. It looks like what's going to be UMC Wilmington. So a lot of fun here. 15 and a half point favorites, almost 16 points. I'm going to go ahead and take Texas Tech here. Texas Tech football, if you guys are football fans as well, keep an eye out for them. They're doing some interesting things with their NIL collective and getting some decent players. So they should be a decent football team next year as well. Number 7, Kansas versus 10, Arkansas. This one's going to pull on the heartstrings a bit for me. As I grew up a big Kansas fan, they won a lot when I was young. I liked them. I liked Duke growing up. And I also like John Calipari and what he was doing at UK with the winning that he did, but then also the players that he was sending to the draft. It was just unprecedented. He was the kind of the one and done guy for a while, and I really respected what he was doing there. So this one's going to be tough to pick a winner. I don't really want to pick a winner. I'd like them both to win because I like both the coaches. But here we go. So we have ChatGPT picking Kansas, a lower confidence score, but they've got much better efficiency ratings on offense and defense. They're also favored. So that should kind of wrap this up. Kind of an interesting year for Coach Calipari. They didn't start very well. They finished decently. So hopefully they can get the win here, but ChatGPT likes Kansas, so we will go ahead and take them. St. John's versus Omaha. This should be a very lopsided matchup. I'm a big fan of Rick Pitino. I mean, he was at Iona a couple years ago. Just love of the game. He just dominates. He was great at Louisville when I was growing up. So big fan of his. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks. It's going to be lopsided, 95% confidence score. St. John's is good on defense. They're good on offense. They just do a lot. They rebound really well, rebound on offense really well. So we're going to go ahead and take, no surprise here, St. John's. And then let's go ahead and move back up and go with the East. Another really good 8-9 matchup. We've got Mississippi State and Baylor. Should be a fun one. I love when the 8-9s match up. They're really tightly contested games here. So see what ChatGPT thinks. We've got Mississippi State with a 60% confidence. So not ultra confident in our pick here, but they've been averaging about 83 points the last 7 games. So that's interesting. I do expect, obviously, all these tournament games don't have the highest scoring unless it's a real blowout. So we'll see. It doesn't look like Baylor's offense will travel better than Mississippi State's offense. But I don't love this pick, but we're going to go ahead and go with it because that's what ChatGPT thinks to keep it honest and consistent, and we'll move on. Oregon and Liberty, another 5-12 matchup here. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks of this. So scroll down here, and I've got Oregon with a 75% confidence score. They're just a bit more efficient on offense and defense than Liberty is. Now, I wanted to know if Liberty was going to win, what would it take? And they shoot about 40% from the arc, making about 11 threes a game. Now, in these tournaments, the big dance, typically you don't see shooting, particularly three-point shooting, travel very well. But that doesn't mean that a player or a team can't get hot for a game or two. So something to keep an eye on there is Liberty could hit a ton of shots, which if you score more points, you win, but they could hit a ton of threes to make this game really interesting all the way through, maybe even pull out the upset. So we'll keep an eye on that. Arizona and Akron, tough finish for Arizona as they lost in the championship against Houston. Let's go ahead and see what ChatGPT thinks of this matchup, this 4-13. I've got Arizona with the 85% confidence score here. They're 14th nationally, better overall as a team. If Akron was to win, let's see, they do excel in three-point shooting, so let's see kind of what happens with that if they can knock down a bunch of shots. Kind of the same thing. Teams that are streaky or shoot very well during the season at times can get hot and make games interesting, especially as the more favored team is a bit tight in the beginning. Not that you guys don't know that already, but kind of interesting. So we'll keep an eye on that, but we'll go ahead and select Arizona here to match up with Oregon, and that should be a really, really fun game. 6-11 matchup here. We've got BYU versus VCU, a nice acronym game. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks here. We've got VCU with the 55% confidence score. We have the 11 seed upsetting the 6 seed here, which should be really interesting. Basically, for this, ChatGPT thinks that VCU's defense will travel better than BYU's offense will, which is always the case in any kind of big game. Defense is always going to travel a bit better. Just the more aggressive, longer team that gets after it on that side of the floor tends to win these types of games. So we'll see if BYU can pull it out, but we are calling for the upset here. Let's go ahead and take VCU. Wisconsin and Montana should be a pretty lopsided matchup. Let's take a look at what ChatGPT thinks here. We've got Wisconsin with a 95% confidence score. Pretty lopsided game here, 18, 17.5 point favorite. So interesting. Now, a couple things. If Montana was to pull this one out, it'd be from making shots, obviously forcing turnovers. But then one thing that's kind of interesting is you have a little bit of a fatigue factor here, which is Wisconsin played a lot of games in a short period of time in the Big Ten tournament. And one thing that's always discounted is these smaller conferences tend to finish their conference championship games or their tournaments earlier than the big boys do. And so there could be maybe some energized legs versus some like dead legs. We'll see kind of how that plays out. But I'm not going to pick an upset here. We'll take Wisconsin over Montana. St. Mary's and Vanderbilt going to be a great matchup. St. Mary's with an interesting season. So they played very well and they were a really good team all year. They ended up losing to Gonzaga in the West Coast Conference Championship game, but they previously beat Gonzaga twice. So really difficult to beat a team a third time in a season, and they ended up actually falling. So let's see what Chatgpt thinks of this matchup here. I've got St. Mary's with a 70% confidence score here. They're a lot more efficient. Now, the one thing about Vanderbilt is they played a ton of really good competition all year. The SEC was great, and that's who they competed against. And so it's not going to be a game where you look at it and say the stage is too big for one team or the other. Yes, St. Mary's is favored, but Vanderbilt has played a lot of tough games. We're not going to take the underdog here. We'll take who ChatGPT recommends. But keep an eye on Vanderbilt as they're not going to be new to this situation, and they've played much tougher opponents than St. Mary's, but we'd still have St. Mary's favored. 2-seed Alabama, 15-seed Robert Morris. I think this is going to be a very lopsided game. Been a big fan of Alabama's game all year. Ended up losing in a pretty unimpressive way to Florida in the SEC championship, but they won in dramatic fashion overtime against Auburn, which I felt like that matchup all year was kind of like what we thought we would get going into the SEC play, but we didn't get it. We actually got it in the game before. Kind of a letdown game for Alabama. Like kind of their Super Bowl was beating Auburn and then playing Florida. Florida just felt better. Florida is who I think is going to win the whole thing. If you had to ask me, they're really good. They're a really solid team. Let's take a look at what ChatGPT thinks. We've got a 95% confidence score for Alabama. They're just better everywhere. Now, one thing, if Robert Morris was to maybe make this game interesting or even win, is their ability to offensive rebound. Now, nothing kills a team's momentum or the pace of game like missing a shot and then the offense getting their own rebound, especially if they can reset offense, burn a little bit of clock, and then get another good look. Not only are you tired, Alabama would be tired from trying to box out and get these rebounds, maybe losing them, also playing longer defense, which then should disrupt offense on the other end. Don't think that's going to be the case here, but if it was, that would be the leading reason as Robert Morris actually rebounds really well. So we'll go ahead and we'll take Alabama here versus St. Mary's, and we'll get to that. But we'll move on to the Midwest matchups, and we'll start with Houston versus SIUE. Houston SIUE in our first game of the Midwest bracket. Let's take a look at what ChatGPT thinks. This looks like a very lopsided game to me. I think Houston's going to boat race SIUE. 95% confidence score for the favorite to win. They're really good. Houston's really good. But if SIUE was to pull this one out, they're a very good three-point shooting team. So again, knocking down shots is a game changer and an equalizer in the tournament. Now, I love Houston. I love the way they play. Their coach, Kelvin Sampson, he's incredible. The way those guys, they're so tenacious on defense. The way that they play as a team, it's if I had a son, he would play the game of basketball the way the guys at Houston play. They are just so talented and they get after it. No ego on that team. They just dominate. So I'm a big fan of Houston. Love the way that they play the game of basketball. They're going to be a tough out for anybody. I would not want to see them. Obviously, they're a 1 seed for a reason, but I would not want to have to play them. So Houston is going to take this one and move on to the next one. Gonzaga, Georgia in our 8-9 matchup. Let's take a look at who ChatGPT thinks. Obviously, Gonzaga just won their conference championship, and Georgia having a decent year. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about Georgia. I haven't watched them play a ton. I've watched a lot of Gonzaga basketball, so I feel pretty confident picking them to win this game. But Georgia is the more athletic team, which is no surprise. A Mark Few team is never going to wow you with their athletic prowess, but they play a very centered game of basketball under control. Not a lot of hero ball, a lot of movement, a lot of open shots, a lot of screens, a lot of slips. It's a lot of fundamental basketball that is really fun to watch. But you go up against a team who's more athletic, and a lot of times that athleticism can disrupt your offense and what you try to do on defense as well. So we'll take Gonzaga here, but that'll be a really interesting game to watch and see what happens. I like Gonzaga's coach. They have the coaching matchup. I think they win that one. So we'll see, and that 8-9 game will be a ton of fun. Let's move on to the next one. Clemson-McNeese State will be a fun game in our 5-12 matchup. Clemson's a very well-rounded team. They have really good forwards. They got really good guards. They added a piece in the portal this offseason that's really helped their team kind of elevate to the next level. They ended up beating Duke. I don't know if any of you guys saw that. But McNeese State is interesting as well. I like McNeese State. I think they have the coaching edge here. If you guys remember Will Wade from LSU, who got kicked out because of a bit of a scandal, he's at McNeese and he's actually up for the job at NC State. So he'll be moving to a larger program probably after this season's over. Now, Clemson with an 85% confidence score. One thing about a team that is an underdog but also has a coach that will be moving on is you kind of have one of two outcomes. Either the team mails it in because they're like, this guy's moving on, he doesn't care about us, like this isn't where he wants to be. He's leaving, he's not locked in, he's not dialed in, we're not gonna be dialed in. That's one way. Now, knowing Will Wade is kind of the opposite, which is this is our last ride. Let's go out with a bang. Let's go ahead and take these guys down. Again, huge fan of Will Wade and the way he does things. NC State, if that's where he goes after the season, is going to be really, really good. But I think Clemson's going to be a little bit more overpowering here. And so we'll go ahead and take the more favored team, Clemson, to beat McNeese. And we'll see where Coach Will Wade ends up because I'll be a fan of wherever he goes next. Purdue High Point in our next matchup here. Purdue is a really fun story as they before were bounced way too soon in the NCAA tournament, and then last year get all the way to the championship and run into just a juggernaut in UConn, who isn't the same team this year, but Purdue isn't the same team this year either. Now, versus High Point, I don't think it really matters. I think they end up beating this team pretty good. 85% confidence score from Chatgpt, but High Point averages 82 points a game, and they score a lot of points in the paint, a lot of points mid-range inside the three-point arc. One thing about that is shots taken closer to the rim tend to go in more. That's very obvious. But that offense can travel pretty well. So getting inside, scoring inside, a lot of that can drain the energy and the confidence of a higher ranked, higher seeded team. And so you could see High Point stretch this one out. And again, Matt Painter, I don't know if he's going to lose a first round game ever again. Hopefully he doesn't. But High Point has a chance here to pull maybe an upset. I'm not going to take that. I'm going to take Purdue in this matchup here, and we'll see what Clemson, how that one fares out. But an interesting game that we could keep an eye on. One of those games where you look at it and you go, wait, High Point's in the game with Purdue? So we'll see how that one plays out. All right, another sweet 6-11 matchup. We have Illinois versus the winner of Texas and Xavier. And so we're going to analyze Illinois versus Texas and then Illinois versus Xavier to see if the lower seed can upset or is favored against Illinois, depending on who wins. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. The first matchup we'll do is Illinois and Texas. I like Texas a lot. Trey Johnson's a stud. He scores the ball pretty easily. I don't know if that team has enough to go the distance, but we have Illinois favored there. Texas is very talented. I mean, they just play really good basketball, but not good enough to win, but just really good to watch. So I don't know if that's the kind of team that you'd want to put money on in the tournament. But they're a fun team to watch. Now, Illinois and Xavier. So we have Illinois topping Texas here. And we also have Illinois topping Xavier as well. So we'll take Illinois in this matchup here. But depending on the winner of Texas and Xavier, we'll see a lot of momentum can be built in those playing games, especially when you have two name brand teams. So that'll be a lot of fun. Xavier shoots the ball really well. So they might best Texas, but we'll see. We will certainly see, but we'll take Illinois on that one, and we'll move on to our next matchup. Kentucky versus Troy. This should be another lopsided matchup here. One I probably wouldn't tune into unless I saw the score pretty tight, pretty late. So we have Chatgpt taking Kentucky with the 90% confidence. Athleticism and just Kentucky overall as a team, their roster is just way deeper, way better than Troy's is, but that has never stopped the underdog from winning a game. So we'll see. Troy does shoot the ball pretty well from three. So if they could get a couple of those to fall early and make Kentucky a little nervous, that could be fun. Kentucky with a new coach this year as well. So it would be good for him to get off to a good start, maybe get a Sweet 16 Elite Eight appearance. It's been a minute for Kentucky while they were under Calipari. So should be a lot of fun there. We'll go ahead and take Kentucky here. And that Illinois-Kentucky matchup will be sweet. And move on to UCLA and Utah State. UCLA, Utah State. A 7-10 matchup. This one could get pretty hairy for UCLA as they are the favorites going up against a really good Utah State team. Now, Chatgpt does favor UCLA a 70% confidence score, but Utah State scores about 80 points a game, which in college basketball is a lot of points. Now, UCLA is really good defensively, giving up just about 65 points per game. So we'll see what travels better. Typically, defense travels better than offense, but a team can get hot on a random night, and that could just be them moving on and UCLA the favorite going home. But we will take UCLA here over Utah State, but that's a game where start to finish could be highly contested. And maybe UCLA squeaks that one out, but I wouldn't be surprised if Utah State was able to hit shots early and then go ahead and beat and upset UCLA. Our final game in the round of 64, 2-seed Tennessee versus 15-seed Wofford. Shouldn't be an interesting game at all. We should see Tennessee boat race Wofford. They've got a lot of really good players. Their point guard Ziegler is really tough. Chaz Lanier is a beast too. Scores the ball really well as their leading scorer. Tennessee has a way. They have multiple ways to win. When you have an underdog like Wofford, basically shooting threes and getting rebounds and limiting possessions is the only path to victory. So I don't see that happening here. I think Tennessee has a chance to go deep in this tournament, and we'll predict their games coming up. But I don't see this one being a game where of any interest. So we're going to take Tennessee here, and that concludes our round of 64. Let's jump into the round of 32 and find out who's going to be in our Sweet 16. Round of 32, 1-seed Auburn versus Louisville. This will be a fun game as well. We've seen Auburn have struggles like late in games. They get a little sloppy on offense. We can see Louisville pull this one out. Their head coach is a lot of fun too. He's really good on social media, really good at the booth in the press conferences. But we've got Auburn winning with a 75% confidence score here. Auburn hasn't been great recently. They kind of didn't give away the game at Alabama, but they struggled to beat them a couple times. You can get if it just comes down to guard play for Auburn, you could see them losing this one. They do have the best player in the game in Broom, so we'll go ahead and take Auburn here. But this one could be an interesting one where Louisville sneaks one out. So Auburn will move on to our Sweet 16. Let's move on to the next matchup. Michigan, Texas A&M. If we get this game, is going to be very exciting. Michigan probably has the most momentum going into the tournament of any team in the field. Now let's take a look at what Chatgpt thinks. We've got Michigan with a 70% confidence score, our first upset via seeding of the round of 32. A lot of fun here. Now, one thing that kind of gives me pause is Texas A&M does have a really good defense, and defense travels. Okay, defense wins all the time. Unless you're tired, defense is going to be. I take good defense over good offense almost any day when we're comparing college kids playing in a tournament where typically offense can get a bit tight. But we will take Michigan as the underdog here to face Auburn in the Sweet 16, so that will be awesome. But we'll take Michigan here over Texas A&M. We'll move on to our next matchup. All right, starting to heat up here a little bit. So we've got South Dakota State / UNC. Remember, we have UNC favored over both South Dakota State and Ole Miss. That's what we picked, so we're going to see them move on. And we have them versus Iowa State. This is going to be interesting. Now, Chatgpt actually thinks North Carolina has the edge here. 65% confidence score. Iowa State has struggled, losing their past 4 out of 7 games. Got an injury to a crucial player. We'll see if he can get back and be 100% to play. Iowa State versus Lipscomb isn't really much that I think Iowa State has to worry about there. But when you place a team that's got enough talent to expose some of your weaknesses or just deficiencies currently, you could see an upset. So we've got UNC actually beating Iowa State. So we're going to take them, South Dakota State making an impressive run here, but we're going to take UNC to beat Iowa State here and move on to the Sweet 16, which would be an incredible story considering they weren't even supposed to get into the tournament, but that might be a conversation for a later video. Marquette, Michigan State. Marquette being the underdog here. A team you don't want to play is a Tom Izzo coach team in the NCAA tournament. You just do not want to face them. And Chatgpt agrees here. 75% confidence score that Michigan State goes ahead and takes this one. Really good defensive team, super athletic, a lot of fun to watch. And so I'm thinking Michigan State might have a chance to make a real run here. They're a 2-seed for a reason, but I don't think a lot of people have them top of mind when you think about who could run to the Final Four. So Michigan State is the team that we will certainly take, and we'll see how they match up against North Carolina in our, what side are we looking at? The South here. Let's go ahead and move on to the West, and we'll analyze this Florida-UConn game. West side bracket here, we have Florida #1 seed versus UConn. UConn, again, back-to-back champions, and I don't think they have enough. Dan Hurley's a wonderful coach and probably wins the coaching edge here. I think he turned down like a massive contract from the Lakers in the offseason. So kind of weird how that's playing out a little bit. But we have Florida taking the cake here. 85% confidence score. I think Florida, again, they're my favorite to win the whole thing. We'll see who Chatgpt thinks. Maybe they get edged out by somebody, but I like Florida. I like the way they play. They're a really talented and deep team that can do a lot and win in a lot of ways. So we're not necessarily going to be looking at taking UConn here. They don't have enough. And we'll move on to our next matchup. Colorado State and Maryland, going to be a wonderful matchup as well to watch. I think Maryland is a much more talented team. They have the best player. And ChatGPT agrees with a 75% confidence score. Maryland's going to be a really fun team to analyze. Whether they can get past Florida, like we'll see what ChatGPT thinks. I think not. But Maryland's a really good team. And anytime you have the best player on the floor on your team, you got a chance to beat just about anybody. And Derek Queen is that guy. So we'll see kind of how that plays out, but let's move on to our next matchup here. Texas Tech and Missouri, going to be a really fun game, going to be tightly contested. A lot of fun here. Missouri's got a really good team, very efficient. They score the ball a lot of ways. They can definitely stop you on defense. Let's see who ChatGPT thinks is going to win this game. We've got Texas Tech with a 75% confidence score. They're just a little bit more efficient than Mizzou is. So we could see Mizzou hit some shots, play really good defense, and probably we'll look at maybe getting an upset here. But I would take Texas Tech on this one. We'll see if who can score the ball better and more efficiently. But I think this one's going to lend to Texas Tech having a really good run and getting back into the Sweet 16. Kansas St. John's going to be a wonderful game as well. If we get this matchup, definitely going to tune into it. Great head coaching matchup. Rick Pitino and Bill Self, legendary coaches in both in their own respects. Let's see who ChatGPT thinks is going to win this game. Pretty confident that St. John's is going to pull this out. St. John's just has better players. I think they might be better coached this year as well. They got a lot of really good stuff. Now, it's hard to bet against Kansas in that experience. They just won a couple of years ago, or I guess a few years ago at this point, but going to be tough out. St. John's is a really good team, and they might end up in the Final Four. We'll kind of keep an eye on that, but really solid team. We'll take them to move on in our bracket here. Duke, Mississippi State. First time we're going to be analyzing Duke today. As we skipped ahead, their 16 seed matchup. Duke really interesting. One, obviously their conference won the ACC without Cooper Flagg, and Cooper Flagg will be back with that high ankle sprain. Typically those heal pretty fast. He's a young kid, so it shouldn't be a big deal. We should see him at about full speed. I think Duke might be the best team in the tournament. Again, Florida's kind of my pick, but Duke they're really good. And so I don't see them having any troubles with Michigan State. We have an 85% confidence score that Duke will get past Michigan State and jump into the Sweet 16. Coach John Shire doing his thing. So we'll go ahead and take them. We'll jump to the next matchup. Oregon, Arizona, going to be a great matchup here if we get this game. Kind of a tough game for both teams when you move on to the round of 32, and this is who you have to face the other opponent here. Oregon, pretty good. Arizona, pretty good. Caleb Love is going to be the difference maker here. If he plays poorly, Oregon wins. If he plays well, Arizona wins. I think that the first two games, maybe just the round of 32 when they match up against Duke could be a different story, but Caleb Love, he plays well. I think they get past Oregon here, but let's see who ChatGPT prefers. They do prefer Arizona, 65% confidence, so we're calling for another upset when it comes to, wait, did I say that right? Arizona, I'm sorry, hello. Arizona getting the slight advantage here, not an upset, very contested game, and we'll see how Caleb Love plays. Hopefully he can have a great game himself for his draft stock, and they can move on. VCU, Wisconsin, going to be a fun one. Remember, we picked VCU to upset BYU in round one. Now they face Wisconsin. So let's take a look at what ChatGPT thinks here. Wisconsin with a 75% confidence score. So VCU kind of falling after they upset. They give one away to Wisconsin. Now, again, VCU has a great defense. They're a great defensive team, and that will travel and play well. It doesn't matter who you're playing or what the seed is. And so I do think Wisconsin just gets past them, but I wouldn't put it past VCU to make another Cinderella run. I guess into the Sweet 16 wouldn't be Cinderella, but another nice run beating two teams that they weren't favored against. So we'll go ahead and take Wisconsin here, but I would not sleep on VCU as they are a really good team. Here we go, another really good matchup here. Really excited about this one. St. Mary's in Alabama. Both teams that had really good seasons but didn't win their conference championship. Now let's see who ChatGPT favors here. We've got St. Mary's as a 65% confidence score. This would certainly be an upset. St. Mary's just playing a better brand of basketball, a more consistent and efficient brand of basketball than Alabama. Now, again, Bama I think has better players. We just saw them beat Auburn, and a lot of people thought Auburn was the best team in the country the entire year. So that can't be slept on. But St. Mary's being that very consistent, the way they play basketball can travel very well. We'll see how Alabama plays in that game if we do get it. Alabama's way more athletic. I think they're actually the better basketball team. But St. Mary's being the pick by ChatGPT is a lot of fun, and we're going to go ahead and take that. So St. Mary's moves on to the Sweet 16, which would be certainly an upset. Here we go, the Midwest bracket. So Houston, Gonzaga also would be a fantastic matchup if we are to get it in the round of 32. Houston, very dominant, great defensive team, score the ball very well. But Gonzaga, very organized, very patient. They won both these teams won their conference actually, which is awesome. So we'll see what we get here. What does ChatGPT think? We've got Houston with a 55% confidence score. So not that confident that Houston comes out on top of Gonzaga. Very interesting here. Now, I would have taken Houston without ChatGPT. I just like their team better. But Gonzaga's really good, and they know how to play in these games. So does Houston. And so this would be a game where it could be like 62 to 58 kind of game. I think that'd be really fun to watch. We'll take the favorite here, but we'll be really and very tightly contested. Excited if we get that matchup for what that could present to us. Clemson, Purdue in a round of 32, a 5-4 matchup. Very tough for these two teams. Again, kind of like the Oregon, Arizona. Tough to match up with this team going into the tournament in the round of 32. You really don't get a banner for going to the round of 32. Nobody really cares. So got to get to the Sweet 16, and this is going to be a difficult matchup for both teams. Now, ChatGPT isn't so confident, but does think Clemson is going to win this game. So we're picking another upset here. Now, I like Clemson. I think they can score it with the guards. Their forwards can score it. They can control the pace of game. I really enjoy the way they play basketball, and they've beaten what a lot of people consider to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the country, in Duke. They did it with their full team. It was at home, so that's part of it as well. But Clemson's a really talented team, and we're going to go ahead and take them with the upset, and we'll see how they match up with Houston as they barely kind of sneak by Gonzaga, and we'll move on to our next matchup. Illinois, Kentucky in another round of 32. Wonderful matchup here. Brad Underwood, coach of Illinois, had a really good finish last year, ended up losing to the champions of UConn. And Kentucky with a brand new coach, which some weren't sure about the hire, both getting into the round of 32 would be awesome. Let's see who ChatGPT favors here, because I think both coaches could look at this season and call it a disappointment if they were to lose in this round of 32. Again, you don't get a banner for going to the round of 32. Ideally, both these teams would like a banner hanging national champion. Neither have the roster to do that, but neither one of these teams would be satisfied with the round of 32 exit. So let's see who ChatGPT favors here. We have Kentucky with a 65% confidence score. Looks like they just have a much different or much better chance of winning in multiple ways than Illinois does. So we'll see how Illinois kind of favors. But when Illinois shoots the ball 27% from three or better, they're 18-2. So if they make 1 out of every 3 threes that they shoot, they're 18-2. And so you have a team where if they could make some shots, this is a team that can move on and beat Kentucky. We will take Kentucky in this matchup. We'll take the favorite. But a game that would be worth watching, that could be tight, and we could see Illinois end up just boat racing Kentucky altogether. So we'll see. Our final game in the Midwest region in the round of 32, UCLA versus Tennessee. This is a game where I think Tennessee should handle UCLA pretty good. Tennessee has a great team, a great roster, and when they're clicking, you kind of look at it and think, is this the best team in the country? So I expect to get a really good performance from them. Again, all of these things are injury, forbidden, but I like the way Tennessee matches up with just about everybody. So UCLA shouldn't be a challenge to them. And I got ChatGPT giving me an 85% confidence score as well to kind of back up the way I'm seeing these things. Now, UCLA is efficient on offense, 35th in the country. So they could do some things, but I think Tennessee has a chance to dominate defensively and score the ball really well offensively. And that doesn't lend very well to UCLA's chances. We'll take Tennessee to move on to the Sweet 16. Now let's move on to the Sweet 16 because things are starting to heat up here, and I've got this is a lot of fun. All right, Sweet 16 matchups here. This is going to be a lot of fun. We have Auburn and Michigan. Really good matchup here. Michigan with the team that has, I think, the most momentum again in the tournament, going against who a lot of people think was the best team all year, maybe until late, in Auburn. They have a lot of experience. So let's see who ChatGPT favors here. We have Auburn with a 75% confidence score, and I agree with that. I think Auburn is the better team. I don't think Michigan has enough to get past them, but we'll see. Auburn has been a little shaky lately, and when they get into a game where it's tight, it could get a little hairy. So we'll see, but we'll take Auburn to win that game. and they'll play the winner of what we think is going to be UNC and Michigan State. So let's get into that one. North Carolina, Michigan State. This is like the blue blood of all blue blood matchups. Wonderful uniform game, great legacy of coaches. It will be an awesome game. UNC is who we think is going to be here, not South Dakota State University. We think it's going to be UNC, but we have Michigan State matching up with them. Now, Chatgpt thinks Michigan State is the better team. I agree. I think UNC at this point would be running on fumes. Again, they kind of snuck into the tournament. Little issue, maybe some issues there, but I think they reward that by getting to the Sweet 16. I think they're a team that probably could have not been in the tournament, but the fact they get to the Sweet 16 shows that they do belong at least a little bit. But I think it's going to be Michigan State overpowering them. Michigan State just has a lot to offer. They got a lot going on. Elite Eight appearance for Michigan State and Coach Izzo, and they would face Auburn. That's going to be a wonderful game to break down. But let's move on to the West bracket, and we'll look at Florida and Maryland. Our West Coast bracket presents us a Sweet 16 matchup of Florida and Maryland. Would be an excellent game. Again, I think Maryland has a great player in Derek Queen. I think he's awesome. I think Florida has a little bit too much power for Maryland. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks. Again, I want Florida to kind of win the whole thing. I don't want them to win. That's who I think is going to win. So we'll see what ChatGPT thinks here. We've got Florida Gators with a 70% confidence score. So that's great. Maryland's defense does pose a bit of a threat to Florida. So we could see it get a little hairy there. Maryland might have the best player on the floor. And so we'll see what the defensive game plan would be from Florida if that matchup is to occur, and how they would handle all the different things that Maryland could throw at Florida. So really interesting matchup there. Let's move on to the next one. A 3-2 matchup in the Sweet 16. If we already get it, Texas Tech, St. John's would be a fantastic matchup. Sweet 16 is like where you just don't miss a game. You don't miss any games from Sweet 16 on. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You watch the games. So awesome matchup here. Let's take a look at what ChatGPT thinks. We got St. John's with a 60% confidence score. St. John's has a lot they can throw at you. I think St. John's has a coaching edge as well. They're going to have the coaching edge in a lot of matchups that they could possibly have. And we're going to take St. John's to win this game. Now, what could Texas Tech do defensively? Basically nothing, but offensively, they could do a lot of different things and be very efficient. So Texas Tech is a sneaky team where if they were to have a run and beat St. John's, like I could see it. It's not what I'm predicting, but I could see it. We can't sleep on a 3-seed Texas Tech, and I don't think a lot of people have watched them actually play. Very solid team. So we'll see what they can throw at St. John's, but ultimately I'm going to take the East Coast team in Rick Pitino to move on to the Elite Eight. Duke, Arizona, great Sweet 16 matchup. This is going to be awesome. Arizona basically has one way of winning, which is Caleb Love playing really well, and then the pieces around him playing well too, which you have to play well to win, but you get what I'm saying. Caleb Love has to be great for them to win. Duke has like 3 or 4 guys that could beat you. Proctor can knock down a bunch of shots. Knipple is just really good. You saw him lead Duke all the way through. And then Cooper Flag obviously returning from that ankle sprain. And by this point, he'd have 2 games under his belt. So he should be playing pretty good. Now, again, a team like Duke has a lot of pressure. Coach John Shire, a lot of pressure on them. They have a very talented team. Picking them to win the whole thing would not be an outrageous thing. So let's see who ChatGPT prefers in this matchup. We have Duke with an 85% confidence score. So I don't see Arizona with the ability to kind of keep up with what Duke has. Just not a whole lot of ways to guard Duke. I don't want to be overly confident with them, but I see them getting to the Elite Eight pretty easily. They have a pretty sweet road, if you ask me. Arizona being their toughest matchup. Oregon could be there too technically, but picked Arizona to be there in the Sweet 16. So interesting one. Then let's move on to the next matchup. Wisconsin, St. Mary's in our Sweet 16 matchup. 3 seed versus 7 seed. St. Mary's is kind of our Cinderella so far. They're a 7 seed, so hard to call them a Cinderella, but having them upset Alabama is going to be one of those where not a lot of brackets are going to call for that, and I don't know if these teams actually play if Alabama actually loses to St. Mary, but here we are, Wisconsin matching up with St. Mary's. Now, Wisconsin to this point, if this comes true, would have a very sweet road to the Elite Eight, having to only beat St. Mary's to get there. So that would be interesting. I would love that road for them. But again, Alabama could just beat St. Mary's pretty bad and like my bracket gets busted at this point. But let's see what ChatGPT thinks. They have Wisconsin with a 70% confidence score. Now remember, there are no Vegas odds for these matchups because they're not posted anywhere because these are just hypothetical games. Wisconsin has the better team. They're very efficient, top 10 in efficiency, scoring 118 points per 100 possessions. So they get the ball, they score. They get the ball, they score a point and then some. St. Mary's could control the pace of this game, but by the efficiency of Wisconsin, they're very under control all the time. And so it's going to be pretty tough for St. Mary's to win this one. I think they're very similar teams. I think just Wisconsin has a little more than St. Mary's has, and they move on to the Elite Eight. Let's move on to our Midwest bracket here. Clemson, Houston match up in our Sweet 16. Now, this is going to be a wonderful matchup because they are very different styles of play. Clemson will methodically score the ball on you. They're going to run their offense. They're going to get their ball. They get the ball to the players who they believe are going to have the best chance to score. Again, great forwards, great guards. They're a really well-rounded team. Again, they beat Duke, so that is something. It was at home, but that is something. They have the potential to beat the best teams in the country. Houston is one of those. But Houston plays a different brand of basketball, and I think their brand of basketball travels a little better. And I don't think Clemson has all of the athletes to keep up with Houston. So let's see what Chatgpt thinks here. I would pick Houston here. The AI also says Houston with an 85% confidence score, very confident that Houston would be the team moving on to the Elite Eight, and they'll play the winner of Kentucky and Tennessee. Final Sweet 16 game here in our Midwest bracket. We have Kentucky and Tennessee. Great game, SEC matchup. What a good one this would be if we were to get it. Kentucky has a lot of really good things they can do. Tennessee has a lot of really good things they could do. I think Tennessee is the more well-rounded team. They can beat you doing a lot of different things. I think Kentucky offers that, but on a lesser scale. And so ChatGPT agrees. We have a 60% confidence score that Tennessee would be the team that actually win this game and move on to the Elite Eight, and they would face Houston, which would be an amazing matchup. So let's move on back up to the South bracket, and we'll take a look at analyzing Auburn, Michigan State. Auburn, Michigan State in the Elite Eight, headed to the Final Four. Great matchup. This is a fantastic matchup. These two teams have been great all year. They offer a lot of different things. They play very similar styles of basketball, a little bit more rugged. I think Auburn offers, if I was picking this game without looking at ChatGPT, I would just say Auburn has the better chance at winning here. I think they can win a lot of ways. They have a lot of guys that can do a lot of things. They've definitely exposed some weakness leading into the tournament, but at this point, beating Michigan, getting to this point, I think they've got a really good shot at winning the whole thing, but winning this game specifically. ChatGPT agrees, 65% confidence score that they get past Michigan State. Love Coach Izzo, really rooting for him, but I just don't see his team being able to beat Auburn. Now, again, we have no hypothetical lines. We have no injuries that play into this, but as I see it, Auburn being the better team here, they would move on to the Final Four, which would be great for them and Coach Bruce Pearl. Now move on to our West bracket, Elite Eight matchup, Florida, St. John's with a trip to the Final Four on the line. Great matchup here. Great matchup. Love Coach Rick Pitino. He's done a wonderful job with his team this year. They were great last year. They're really, really good this year. I think Florida's the best team in this whole thing. And so I would pick Florida to win this thing. ChatGPT also agrees, 65% confidence score. So not ultra confident in this pick, but they do believe that that they would beat and take care of St. John's here. So kind of in that run for St. John's, wonderful year. But we're taking Florida to move on to the Final Four here. Let's go ahead and move on to the East bracket, and we'll look at Duke, Wisconsin. Final Four trip on the line, Duke, Wisconsin, 1 and 3 seed. This would be an awesome, awesome, awesome matchup to see. I think Duke has a chance to be the best team in this whole thing. They can win a lot of different ways. They can lean on guys to lead their team. I think they have the most guys who could lead their team to victory of anybody in the actual tournament. So they're a very fascinating team. Wisconsin, also very, very good. Them being in the Elite Eight probably isn't going to be in many brackets. I think the reason that is the case is because we have St. Mary's taking care of Alabama. So I probably would have Alabama Duke matching up here if I was personally picking this, but I'm not. I've got Duke, and in this matchup, Duke is the heavy favorite here. They would be able to beat Wisconsin pretty handily, which is, I would expect that. So Duke moving to the Final Four would be awesome. Great, just Duke anywhere on big time college basketball is just great to tune into. And this tournament should be nothing different than that. We should have them in the Final Four, a great team to watch. And let's move on to our Midwest bracket. We're talking about Houston and Tennessee. Houston, Tennessee matching up in the Elite Eight with a trip to go to the Final Four in our Midwest bracket. This would be an awesome matchup. There are pathways for both teams to win. If you told me Tennessee would win because of XYZ, I'd believe you. If you told me Houston could win for XYZ reason, I'd believe you as well. I think Houston's a bit more well-rounded. Again, they're probably the scariest team to face in this whole thing. I think Tennessee has some vulnerabilities. We saw that against Florida. We've seen that throughout the season. They have some lapses that are kind of weird. They're a really good team. They really are. But I think I would pick Houston here. And ChatGPT agrees, 65% confidence score, that Houston would go ahead and move on to the Final Four over Tennessee in this case. So great season for Tennessee. They did a lot of really good things. But when you go up against Houston, it just is what it is. They're a really good team. So to this point, we are in the Final Four. And let's take a look at our teams here. We have Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston. So we basically ended up picking all #1 seeds. Shout out to ChatGPT for getting us kind of right here. The upsets that we've picked so far have been in the round of 64 and the round of 32. We had one Sweet 16 upset, I believe, but for the most part, we're going to take the favorites here because I think these are probably the 4 best teams in the country when we look at just where they are. Now, everybody believes that because they're the #1 seeds each. But let's see who, in fact, is going to be moving on to our championship game, and then we'll try to predict a score as well. Here we go, Final Four. So we have Auburn, Florida is going to be our first game that we're going to analyze. And this one's going to be tough. I think Florida is the best team in the tournament. I think they have the chance to win the whole thing. If I didn't use ChatGPT, I would choose them to win. But ChatGPT has its own criteria for the way they pick teams. And so let's see who they give the edge to here and who's going to make the trip to the championship game. So drum roll here. Auburn with a 65% confidence score. Now, I don't love that ChatGPT picked Auburn here. Again, Florida is the team that I believe is going to win the whole thing, but this is who ChatGPT thinks, and which is awesome. Now, Florida did beat Auburn most recently, so there's that. Beating a team twice is very difficult. Beating a team multiple times in a season is very difficult. The team that lost has a different game plan that they're going to come with. The team that won just tries to repeat the same game plan that won before. And so the team that lost is like, hey, we're going to try something brand new. Typically, the team that has won, they don't have a brand new scheme they're going to go for. Why would they change it? It's already worked before. So Auburn is going to head to the national championship game. Not who I would have picked to get there, but wow. Seeing as this season has played out for them, that's interesting. Here we go. Auburn in the championship. Here we go. Duke, Houston, our second game in the Final Four to get to the championship. This would be an awesome game. If we were to get this would be an amazing game. Duke, again, has, I think, a lot of ways to win with multiple players that can lead them to victory. I don't believe Houston has that. I do believe Houston has great defense, and that defense, it's hard for a great offense to beat a great defense because great defense travels, especially when you're in the Final Four and you're playing on basically like a football stadium. You're playing in a big old stadium and it just looks weird and all the feels off and like the background is really deep. And if you guys have ever been to a tournament game, what you understand is like typically you're on a football stadium or you're in a big arena. And the drop is different. The court's elevated. A lot of things are different about a Final Four game. And so what typically travels on offense doesn't typically come just like, but defense does. Defense typically performs really well in these settings. So I do think Houston has the chance to really upset Duke here, which would be, for me, I think it would be an upset. Let's see what ChatGPT thinks. My computer flips to black here. 55% confidence score that Duke actually wins, which means we get a Duke-Auburn championship. That would be fascinating to see here. Wow. I did not think that ChatGPT would pick Duke over Houston as it's picked Houston because of his defensive prowess all the way through. So we'll see how this plays out. I would love to see Duke and Auburn in the championship game. My personal pick would have been Duke versus Florida, but that's okay. That's why we use the AI. It should be smarter than us, but we'll see. We'll see. Had a really good time making this. Let's see who's going to win our championship game. Now, before we get to the championship game, if you guys have liked this content so far, let me know in the comments. Make sure you like the video, subscribe for more stuff. We day trade around here. That's what the main purpose of this channel is, but I do want to incorporate sports more as I'm an avid lover of all sports. So it'll be a lot of fun to make more of these videos as the spring and summer continues to go on. So if you enjoy this, subscribe, comment, let me know, and stick around and let me know what other content you would like me to break down as we continue to move forward. So I really appreciate you watching this far. Let's get into our championship breakdown. All right, this is what you came to see. Who does the AI believe is going to be our 2024-2025 college men's basketball national champion? Duke, Auburn. This is going to be really fun. This is going to be a lot of fun. If we got this game, blockbuster, because this is the team, these are the two teams that I think most people who enjoy college basketball and casuals have probably seen play. They played in the most high-stake games. They've been really good all year. They've got a lot of players that you might know on both teams. Obviously, Cooper Flag being the biggest star in college basketball certainly helps. So him getting to the championship would be amazing for the sport of men's basketball, just like we had Caitlin Clark last year for the women's basketball and what she's doing in the WNBA as well. So wonderful game here. What does Chatgpt believe is going to be the winner? Here we go. Chatgpt believes Duke is going to win the national championship with a 65% confidence score here. We have Duke winning the national championship. That's what the AI believes, the best team in college basketball, as we have ranked them against different opponents using the NCAA formula and format. So a 65% confidence score is confident, but not the most confident we've seen, not the least confident either. Now, again, I think Duke has a lot of ways they can win. I think Auburn also has a lot of ways you can win. So in a lot of ways, we have the most versatile teams matching up. This is going to look like a professional basketball game, and just the size, length, defense, and offensive scoring. A lot of talent is going to be on the floor here if we get this matchup. And so God, it would be a lot of fun to have this. It would be so much fun to have this matchup as the championship game for the men's college basketball tournament. Now, we picked Duke to win, but we need a score. And so I asked ChatGPT, I go, hey, okay, well, this is going to be the national championship game. So what do you think? What's the score going to be between Duke and Auburn, knowing that you picked Duke to win the whole thing? And I have a score of 78 for Duke, 74 for Auburn. So a 4-point national title game is what we are predicting here. So Duke, and then we need to do the combination of points here, number of total points. So 78 plus 74 is 152 points here. So we'll go ahead and go with that. And that is going to wrap it up for our session. Duke is our national title winner, and a wonderful season for Duke. And ideally, Cooper Flag can stay healthy. Great season for him, as he probably ends up being the #1 draft pick in this upcoming NBA draft. So thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new around here. Like the video and comment if you guys have differing opinions. Who do you have as your winner? Who do you think ChatGPT got the pick wrong on? And I would love to just interact with you guys. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.